Hello, how are you? Just adjusting my screen. I feel like anytime I'm on something different, it moves. So, hello and welcome. I feel like I always say the same things, but I know I turned slow mode on for some reason with the messaging and I can't remember how to shut it off. So if you have anything to say, if you want to put it into the chat, you can. I will see it and I will try to get to it as I see it. But welcome, hello. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Mary Matson-Heskin, and I am Reverse Journey Wellness. It's just me. I'm a soul practitioner. So if you're wondering why I'm here and what I'm doing on live, every month I have a sacred circle, and we have usually a focus for that month. And this month's energy that we just did on Sunday was about tapping into your intuition, how you can activate it and expand it, and then also how you can receive messages from your nature guides is what I call them, but nature messages basically. And so today is going to be a Q&A for that. So for people that weren't in the Sacred Circle, I'm going to give you a little bit of background on intuition and the spirit guides and or the nature guides that we're going to be talking about. And if anyone has questions, you can go ahead and put it in the chat. And sort of let me know. Let me know if you can hear me, if everything's okay coming through. See, I got a few people. It's great. All right, well, let's get started if there's no questions right now. So most of you probably know what, and okay, I knew it was on slow mode. Okay, fabulous. Hi, Jen. Oh, you're absolutely welcome. I'm glad you're here. I feel like I just saw you, but I'm excited to see you again. So most of you probably know what intuition is. It's really when you have those, like, I just knew. It's like those moments that you just knew something. And sometimes it can come through as a thought. It can come through as a feeling, like an emotion. It can come through as a sensation within your body. And just something that just kind of pops in and you feel it. It kind of catches your attention. And that is basically how I define it, but I know that it's formally defined as, and I wrote it down, our ability to understand something immediately without the need for conscious reasoning. And what that means is, in that moment, it's like, yes, I know exactly what it is. And when those things hit us, it's pretty exciting. It usually comes very spontaneously, but sometimes we get several nudges that we don't pay attention to, and intuition tends to get louder and louder if we either miss it, we miss that nudge, or we misinterpret it. And so I know people probably have different words for intuition. It could be anything like inner knowing, higher wisdom, the gut sense. Sometimes people call it sixth sense. So it has a lot of different words, but it's basically same thing, intuition. It's something that I like to say is like part of our factory settings. We're all born with intuition. It's just what we do with that, how well we pay attention to it, how well we refine it and kind of tune into that. Sometimes through our life, our intuition can sort of be dampened or maybe even quieted to the point that we don't even hear it anymore. And that can happen for a lot of different reasons. It can happen because of family. It could happen because of culture, religious, or really just any sort of authoritative person in our life that sort of negates what we're feeling, what we're sensing, what we know. And sometimes it's out of trying to keep us in line. Sometimes it's trying to keep us respectful when we're kids. But really what happens is we start to turn it down. We start to not pay attention to it. And we start to seek out those messages from other people. And that can create a whole mess of problems for us. And I can say, I really didn't I always knew I was intuitive. I always knew that that was a thing, right? There was always moments that I just knew stuff, but I didn't realize that other people maybe didn't tap into it as well as I did. And I learned that when I was working in substance abuse. My life prior to this, I was in substance abuse counseling for about 12 years, I think. And, person after person would come through the door and I would say, well, how do you feel about this? Or how do you make your decisions? What do you know? What does your gut tell you? And oftentimes they would say, I don't know. I don't know how to make those decisions, or I don't know what I think or what I like or what I know, because it was kind of smothered, we'll say, out of them. So that was kind of like a wake up call for me to start talking to people about, like, what is your intuition and why is it so important? If it feels difficult to make a decision, if it feels like you're really struggling to know who you are, what you want, and to see those sort of signs and synchronicities within your life that sort of directs you on your path, you probably want to work on your intuition. I feel like it gives me a lot of clarity and confidence with making my decisions, and it really helps me when I am sort of at a crossroads and wondering like which direction to go. I like to talk things out. So I will talk about it and talk about it and talk about it. It's just the way that my mind processes stuff. But then I ultimately go with what my gut's telling me, what my intuition is telling me. So I'm sure you guys have had experiences like this. Probably nothing brand new, but I just wanted to know if anyone ever had an experience where their intuition felt like it was shut down or negated. Again, it could be by family, religion. It seems like that often happens, and then cultural. I don't know if that's ever been anyone's experience. Put it in the chat if it is. I know um, when I think back about how it was negated for me in my own personal life, it stays with you, and it makes it a struggle to really make decisions and choices for yourself um, that's based on your highest good. So hopefully you haven't had too many of those experiences. And I know I put that slow mode on. So hopefully it'll come through if you have a message. But I did want to talk a little bit. I wrote notes for myself, which I normally don't do, but I thought I better because I'll forget what I'm going to say. So one of the things that helped me with intuition was really learning how to get quiet and go within. And that's something that I think is huge, to really get to know yourself, to be embodied. And for a lot of people, it's a struggle, especially if there's been any big T or little t traumas, little t being just the stuff that kind of cuts us as we're growing up, big T, obviously, big traumas. But, I think sometimes there's a hesitancy to go back within to the body. It may not feel safe. And so to really get aligned with what is safe, what does that feel like? You should always feel safe within your own body. And this is one of the ways. I think it's like hand in hand. They go together so well. So how we do that with going within, I have a really simple practice. I really do. I feel like everything that I do, I take the information and, like, how can I simplify this? How can I create something that's so easy that even I can do it, that even I can follow through with it. And so, how I go within, how I get present with myself, is simply through breath work. It's so simple. You have this tool that is so powerful, your breath, and just breathing in and letting it out. You just start to obviously calm the body, but you also get really, really present. You start to slow down the central nervous system's processing. And instead of fight, flight, or freeze, you kind of go into that state of like, all clear, I'm okay, and I'm safe. So breath is a great way to start getting embodied. And if anyone has any issues with either breath work or feeling like it's unsafe to go within their body, I always recommend that you talk to a therapist, somebody that's really trained in trauma informed therapy. And if you want to have some help with that, one of the um, modalities that I always recommend is EMDR. It's fabulous. So, if you don't have any issues, all you really have to do is just take some deep breaths in and let them out. There's a lot of different techniques that you can use for breath work. My favorite is it's called count. It's not super fancy. It's called counted breath, and it's 4-7-8. You inhale through your nose for 4, hold for 7, and release for 8. And you just do that a few times. And the nice thing is it sort of breaks up the thoughts, the pattern of whatever's making you worried or anxious or stressed out, because you have to focus on like, what am I doing? Am I inhaling through the nose, exhaling through the mouth? What is the count? So it sort of breaks up those thoughts, engages a different part of your brain. And so you can just really focus on the breath work. And Jen says, yes, your words are so true. I lost my intuition in my career by pressure to go to college and seek a job with stable income and benefits. So I'm lost on what intuition in a job would be. Oh, well, we can work on that. We can totally work on that. Yeah, I think when we have that external pressure of what we should be doing, usually it's not with our best intention. It's usually whatever the other person deems as either something that they'd want, something that they didn't get to experience, and sort of put that pressure on us, even if it's not our thing. And I know that happens a lot of times when people are picking their career, when people are picking their even their major in college. That can be a huge, huge roadblock because it feels so misaligned and it gets so frustrating. But there's that pressure, that external pressure to stay with it, stay the course, like you said, get a stable job, have steady income coming in. And we sort of forget about all the other perks of like, oh, wait, I want to be joyful and happy. I want to emotionally thrive. I want to have wonderful connections and relationships, right? We sort of forget about that stuff when people are sort of, and I'm kind of going to go out on a limb, but with the stable income, I feel like always there's some sort of message about lack or scarcity. And so, not necessarily from you, but maybe whoever was really encouraging you to seek out either the career or the job. That there's a fear that there's not going to be enough, or there's not going to be enough to go around, or there's just not going to be the type of money that's going to keep you, I don't know, financially secure. But it's it's a lie. It's true. It's not true. Yeah, Genesis true. Yeah. So I think starting with the breath is so important, and just to this is going to be kind of a big one, but just to kind of be open to receiving intuitive messages. The more that we tell ourselves, like, I'm ready to receive, I'm open to receiving, I want to receive more of those messages, the more that we're apt to pick up on it. The brain loves to seek out patterns. And if we're kind of programming it to look for those patterns, it's going to find those patterns. Oh, this might be a sign. This might be something to pay attention to. And when it really hits you as like, oh, wow, that's a good idea, or oh, that feels really good, that's when you know that it's usually intuition. When you start to feel a little bit stressed or worried, when you start to feel fear, that's obviously a big sign that it's not your intuition. That's your fear. That's your ego mind, right? And so being open to, I can receive that. And if you haven't had that practice in a while, or if you don't remember ever having that practice of going within, I would suggest doing a couple little, like, just a little checklist of checking in with your whole self. So, what am I feeling? Like, what am I physically feeling? What are the sensations that I'm feeling right now? So, I have shoes on right now. So, I have shoes on, and I can say I can feel the bottom of my shoe, under my foot. I can feel my legs against the chair, right? Um, my lower back's kind of funky right now, so I can feel that, right? I can feel the tension in my shoulders. By the end of the day, It's all up here. So kind of just checking in with what those sensations are is one way to kind of figure out physical sensations. Another thing is to check in with your emotion. How am I feeling? I'm happy. Well, I always say, don't say happy, sad, and angry. There's more. There's more in there, right? But I'm feeling apprehensive. I'm feeling excited. I'm feeling, sullen. Whatever the emotion might be. And then also you can kind of check in with yourself and see, you can just ask yourself little questions that you probably know the answer to. So not like, what do I want to do with the rest of my life? Don't start with that one. But like, what's my favorite pizza topping? What's my favorite flower? What's my favorite season? What's my favorite sibling? I don't know. Don't answer that one. But just answering questions that you already know the answer to. But when you answer it, see how that feels when you say that answer. There's something called muscle testing, and it's totally different concept, but I'm gonna say the way that it's kind of similar to this is that when you say something that's incongruent, when it doesn't jive, your body reacts to it, and it's a really easy way. And so if you're like, oh, I love mushrooms on my pizza, but you say my favorite pizza topping is green peppers, you're going to feel like, do I? Is that the thing that I like? And so it's good to check in with that and see, what does it feel like when it is something that I enjoy or like or appreciate, and what does it feel like when it's not. And so you can start kind of playing around with that and know that, like, intuition, I think I said this at the beginning, but intuition comes in all different ways. Like, yeah, I did say that we could have thoughts, we could have um, emotional reaction, we can have a physical reaction, it can be just like a sensation. I get very tingly on my legs and the back of my neck when it's intuition, when I'm like, oh yeah, that's a good idea. So that's how I know immediately before I can even say, oh, yeah, that's a good idea. That's how I feel it. So I don't know if anyone has ever had an intuitive hit and had an experience that they could kind of describe. But if you have, go ahead and put it in there. I think it's interesting because people, I don't know if all people think this or just maybe some people that I think about or have talked to. Jen says, wow, that's a great tip. I will totally use. I love cheese fries to measure it. And that's a good bar. That's a good bar to measure by. Who doesn't love cheese fries? But but I think it's so interesting because people will tell me like, I just imagined it being, and I've had these moments too, where I just imagine this being like a billboard with flashing, lights telling me like, this is it, this is your decision. And I'm here to say sometimes it might come that way, but usually it comes so subtly. It's so gentle and it's so quiet. It almost requires us to kind of go within, like I was saying, because it is just something that you just sort of perceive and then it's gone. And so practicing like what I'm feeling in the moment, what does light me up, what does create stress for me. You don't have to dwell on that one too long, but what lights me up. You kind of know those sensations and those feelings. And so when you feel them again, then you know. Oh, I have a question. Ooh. Do your intuitive hits generally feel the same for you, or does it hit you different physically depending on the hit? So it's a good question. So I was just saying, I do usually feel it in my legs, and the back of my neck is like a tingly sensation when it feels like it's kind of dropping in. But I will say, if it's like a warning signal to me, like don't do that or be be wary of this person or whatever it might be, I feel it in a different way. And so I don't want to give you guys too much information that's like, wait, which one is it? But when it's something that's kind of a warning system for me, kind of telling me like, take a step back and kind of think about it, I do feel it in my gut. So usually it feels like a tightening. Usually it feels like I'm going into defensive mode. And then I know my intuition is trying to like just tap on my shoulder and say like, this isn't a good sign. If it's something that I'm really excited about, usually I have that different sensation. Sometimes, not always, but sometimes I'll have a thought and it just feels like it drops in from out of nowhere. And I know a lot of people talk about that could be a guide. That may not be your intuition. It might be one of your spirit guides or nature guides or somebody helping you along. And I'm not going to say it's one or the other. It could be either. It could be either one. There we go. Or you can say that's my intuition anyways, because my higher self is picking up on that message from my guide. So yeah, so I would say maybe play around with it and see if it comes up the same way for you. It's always curious, right? Like how everybody experiences it. It doesn't have to be, there's no right or wrong way. Also, I need to emphasize that, underline that exclamation point. There's no right or wrong way to perceive intuitive thoughts, feelings, sensations. That's probably the big part with the being. So my big suggestion is kind of being open to that. My second piece of that is, how do you practice that? How do you activate and expand receiving those intuitive messages? Meditation. That is probably the number one way to really get in touch with your intuition, because you really get to know not only your body, but you put yourself in a very relaxed state, a very receptive and open state. And so the worry thoughts sort of subside, everything sort of quiets down, and then you're able to kind of filter through, what do I need to listen to and what can I kind of throw out? What do I need to not even pay attention to? And so meditation, it does not have to be anything extraordinarily long. I think there was a research study that just said, I don't know if it was 8 minutes, 11 minutes. I can't remember what it was. But it was a short amount of minutes. If you've never meditated, I would start with 1 to 3 minutes of quiet and see how that goes, and then extend it out. If you can. If you can't, that's okay too. It's definitely a practice. The more you practice, the better you get at it. But there's still some days that I have complete ants in the pants and I can't sit down to meditate at all. And then I kind of give myself permission to just not today for whatever reason. So one of my best intuitive moments was when I randomly went to see a movie that inspired me to want to take a dance class with absolutely no rhythm. The thought popped in my head and I felt excited. Yeah. So that's a great example. I think that's a great example of there it was, right? And there was that I'll just call it nudge or intuitive hit that you received, and it just felt like, right, I just knew in that moment that that's what I was going to do. And I'm pretty sure some good stuff came from that, but it's exciting when we have those moments, right? There's been lots of times that I've sort of sat back and thought, if I didn't follow through with this, what would have happened? Or the opposite. My intuition told me no, and I still kind of fought it, or somebody else did, and said, no, give this other person a chance, give this job a chance, whatever it might be. And it just didn't go anywhere, because it was something that was just misaligned with me and just created too much stress and overwhelm. So yeah, those are exciting times when we have really good intuitive moments. I don't know if I even have just one. Isn't that crazy? I feel like every week I have a special intuitive moment. But I do appreciate some of the big ones. That lead me down my path of highest good. I mean, that's really what we want, right? We want that clarity. We want that confidence. We want to really recognize what is safe and what is not safe for us. We really want to just be able to quiet our fears and our self-doubt, our worries, so it feels like we're making a really well formed and thought out decision. And for me, it really is, it helps guide me through relationships. It's it's invaluable. It really is. And so it sort of breaks my heart when people say that they don't receive those intuitive hits, or they don't know what intuition is, because it helps me to stay sort of rooted. It helps me to stay sort of grounded, and really make choices for me, like I said, that lead me to doors opening. Um, so Jen says, "Yep, the class changed my life. I met a best friend like a sister for almost 20 years now." See, that's fabulous. I love that. It's such a good experience to have when you know, like, I just had that thought and look what happened. There's times that I know it can go either way, right? I can think of a time that I'm perpetually late. Sometimes I get myself distracted. Sometimes I'm that sister. Oh, that's awesome. Well, welcome. I'm glad you're here to support that and say, yep, that was me. um, Sometimes the intuition can come in weird, subtle forms as well. With the procrastination or just not getting out of the door on time, there's been lots of times. Yep, she's fabulous. There's been lots of times that I've actually avoided, like, car accidents, or stuff that probably would have led to some sort of stress or worry, that I'm always amazed, like, oh, there was something telling me just to wait, and I did, and look what I avoided. That seems to happen a lot. And again, you can say, is that your guide? Is that somebody that's wanting to keep you safe, or is that your intuition? And I guess that's up for debate. But I like that. And when I make big choices, I like to really tap into the intuition. So meditation, the other thing I wanted to say about meditation, to kind of go within, so you can kind of quiet all of the stress thoughts, you really get to know yourself, through meditation. And the things that maybe you weren't sure of, I have a lot of people that say, I'm really not sure if this is the guy, this is the job, this is the food, this is the whatever, right? You really start to get clear, because you start to recognize what that pull feels like when it feels positive for you, what it feels like when it's sort of repelling or letting you know it's not aligned. That doesn't come necessarily during meditation. Sometimes thoughts will drop in, that are very productive and helpful during that time of meditation. But it happens outside after you're done. When you have a consistent practice, you'll just notice these signs and synchronicities popping up for you. So I do encourage people to try, like I said, maybe a minute or 3 minutes. Just start small. If you're like, I have the worst case of ADHD, I cannot settle my mind, I would encourage you then to do a walking meditation, or do something that has the body moving as well, that's rhythmic. So if you're walking, just focus on, your feet hitting the ground. If I have somebody that I know that likes to run, and that rhythm of the running is really meditative for him, and it sort of puts him in a zone, which is kind of cool. And then sometimes people will find that also from, like, gardening, anything that's repetitive, mowing the lawn, anything that's, I hate to say, like, semi-mindless, but sort of mindless stuff, that just allows your mind to kind of go. So that is a little bit about meditation. And then I wanted to also talk about, this is kind of a big one, but it's like, what do you tell yourself about, am I able to receive intuitive thoughts? I think a lot of times people say, I'm not intuitive, or I don't receive that, or I'm not spiritual enough. And that's all a bunch of malarkey. And so if you want to change even that dialogue, that inner dialogue, to something that's like, even if you're like, I know I don't pick up on those messages. So maybe I'm learning to be aware of those messages. I'm working on, kind of give your subconscious mind something to kind of, grab hold of. I'm working, towards receiving those messages, or being aware of those messages. It's huge that we're using language. I know there's a lot out there in the self-help world that says, like, use that, in present tense, like, I am intuitive. Well, the psychology behind that is like, not so much. Because what happens is if your subconscious mind is like, no, you're like super dense, nothing ever gets through. You are the person with the worst luck, and you have no ability to pull in that information. If you say I am intuitive, your subconscious mind is going to be like, no, you're not. And it's going to feel resistant to that. And so create the language that works. So if you're in the process, or I'm open to receiving, I'm beginning to become aware, use language that fits where you are right now. That's going to open things up a little bit more. We tend to be our harshest critics. So you'd probably be surprised that you're more intuitive than you thought. But it. I can't tell you that. You got to feel it. You got to sense it. You got to know it. So that's one thing that I want to give you as a tip. Um, and then, I feel sometimes people are really resistant to journaling. And I think it is so powerful. But it's good to, maybe if you're starting to work on intuition, maybe have a journal, a notebook, a piece of paper, something, post-it notes, doesn't really matter, where you can start jotting down things during the week of what you experienced, what you thought was maybe an intuitive nudge, maybe what you thought was an intuitive sensation, what you thought was an intuitive thought. Just write that down and kind of keep it somewhere so you can kind of reflect back on it. Sometimes I feel like we receive those messages and it's not something that needs to happen right then and there, but maybe down the line, it makes more sense to us. So having that journal is huge. And the other thing, if you can do this, it'll make a huge difference. Love that work around resistance and subconscious. That has been a big challenge. The just saying it never felt. No, it doesn't feel true. It doesn't. And, I understand in theory what they're trying to say, what a lot of people in like self-help and personal growth are trying to say, that, if you can imagine it, you can draw it into your world or draw it into your life. But they're sort of discounting that the subconscious mind is the thing that's driving your bus. It's running the show. So if that's not online, it's always going to be very misaligned. And so, it's how we tweak those things that we say. I love it, affirming thoughts. I love affirmations. I use them all the time with myself and with clients. I'll reframe stuff. I don't think my kids like it when I when I use affirming thoughts with them, but trying to reframe stuff for people when you hear them saying kind of self-deprecating things, or saying things that feels very limiting, lack mindset type of stuff. And I feel that there's such value in using affirmative thoughts. However, I think that you probably have to make sure that you're tweaking them so you're not hitting that resistance with the subconscious mind, because then you're just going to be stressed and spinning your wheels and just miserable. So find that affirmation for you that works. But in addition to journaling, just writing down stuff that you notice, dream journals are a huge way to tap into not only your intuitive messages, but also to sort of affirm for yourself that, like, hey, I'm actually receiving some insight here. And sometimes our dreams complete nonsense, right? Just gobbledygook. Sometimes they're not. But if we start writing them down and we start tracking, like, oh wow, I keep coming up with this. For I think it was like 2 weeks ago, I kept having dreams about tornadoes and bad storms. And we'd had, I don't know if we actually had a tornado come through our area, but we don't hear the warning sirens out here. And so I know that was like a stress dream. I know I kept having that dream of like, am I going to be prepared, or what will I do? And so I know that was my subconscious mind trying to work through the stress of my day, right? Something that's happening. So you can sort of see like, oh, okay, yeah, I probably need to reassure myself that I'll be okay. But, there also might be some very like symbolic things in there, right? If you have dreams about water, it might be about emotions, or, there can be just some things that are really interesting in there. And then, like I said, sometimes it's just gobbledygook because your brain is trying to work out whatever, it's usually whatever stressor you're having, whatever answer you're needing, right? So, but dream journals are awesome because if you write that stuff down and you start paying attention to it, again, you're going to see those themes. And then if you think about what those themes are, you'll see, okay, there's some cohesiveness to some of it, at least, maybe not all of it, but to some of it. And so, how can you kind of manage that? So, that I think is a really huge one. Um, and I know there was another one. There was another one that I wanted to talk about. So, another big one, and this might be where most of us are at, is practicing to trust ourselves. It's a biggie. It gets negated all day long. So, how do we practice trusting ourselves? I make good decisions. And if you don't believe that piece yet, I'm learning to make good decisions. I'm able to make good decisions for myself. I know what I want. And if you don't know what you want yet, I'm learning to recognize what I want. So, really creating some sort of language for yourself to practice that trust. If you're not really sure, like where to begin with that, you're not really sure on that spectrum of mistrust of self and full trust of self. Ask somebody that you trust, somebody that you care about, that cares about you, that doesn't have intentions, doesn't want to manipulate you, and ask them what they think. You know, how good do you see? How good am I at making decisions for myself? Where do you see that I struggle? And be open to that feedback. Again, ask somebody that is, safe. Don't ask somebody that's horribly critical and unreasonable. But see if they can give you a little bit of insight to that. And then, think about what do I value in relationships with others, especially regarding trust, because it's going to tell you one of two things. It's either going to tell you your shadow side of what makes you nervous about trust, or the thing that makes it feel difficult for you to trust yourself. That shadow, we all have it. Don't worry about that. It's never going to go away, but we can like heal it and integrate it. So it's there, but it's not a huge issue anymore. But it's either going to reveal that to you, or it's going to reveal actually one of your strengths. So I value this in other people because it's something I do, right? So you're going to find one of those two camps, and then you can just maximize your strength, try to minimize the thing that's struggle or shadow. So with the trust, here's the thing that this has helped me. I'll just say this is not something that I've seen in books. This is not something that I've heard a lot of people talk about, I guess I'll say, but for me, this has been super helpful. If I don't know, if I can't pick up on my intuitive thought or feeling or sensation, I will ask for help. So I will put it out there to whoever, whether it's my guides, whether it's my nature guides, nature spirits. It could be an ancestor, ascended master. It could be an archangel. It could be any of the goddesses. It can be anything really that you feel has some wisdom, that would have your best intention, your highest good at heart, and put it out there. Put it out to them and say, show me, right? Provide that information to me. And that's why I tied it to nature guides, because when I was really doubting my intuition, I had somebody in my life, I was in a relationship that, I won't say that it was gaslighting, but I will say he negated a lot of my gut instincts with just, you're wrong. You're just wrong. And I was like, oh, wow, he's so adamant about this. I must be wrong. And lo and behold, no, I wasn't. I was right. But not about everything, but about some things, about my intuition. But, when we feel very shaky in our intuition, I think it's important that we're putting faith, so to speak, in something that really feels safe and that we're connected to. And for me, it was nature. And specifically, it was birds. And so that's where I started with, if this is the right job for me, show me this. Or, maybe I was thinking about a issue or concern, and a goose showed up and it, walked across my path or flew outside my window. I would go look up. I have a couple animal books. I would go look up, what does that mean? And then I would try to apply that. Well, how does that apply to the situation that I'm in or the thing that I'm thinking about? And so it sort of gives you something outside of yourself that's kind of you're receiving that information from. So this is something called social proof. So we're going to believe it more if we hear it from something external than ourselves. And so this is just a way to kind of bypass the doubt, the negativity, the fear that we might have when we're worried that our intuitive thoughts aren't going to be loud enough, clear enough, accurate enough, whatever it might be. And so it's interesting. I mean, I don't know if anyone's had any experience with, if they have any nature guides. But like I said, mine started with birds, and it actually started a really, really long time ago. When I was a little kid, my mom would tell me what the birds were. We'd hear a bird and she would, kind of tell me what it was. And I didn't know what the birds' names were, but I knew, like, yeah, they're here to tell us stuff. I don't know why I thought that they were here to tell us stuff, but I did. That's what I thought when I was a kid. And when I was in college, I met this girl in my class, and she and I were just sitting outside in the quad one day, just kind of talking, enjoying the day. And she had asked me about my animal totem. Her family, she had some extended family that I don't know if they were Native American or if they just had, I don't know, family interest in it. I don't know. But she'd asked me what my totem animal was. And I was like, I have no idea what you're talking about. So she kind of told me. She said, what animal shows up for you a lot? And I was like, oh, geez, I don't know. And I thought, oh, red-tailed hawk, because where I went to school, sort of lots of open land. I live in Illinois. It's flat and boring until you get to Southern Illinois. And, as I would drive back and forth to school, it was like a 5.5 hour drive. And, I'd always be a little bit fearful if I was driving by myself. What if I get a flat, or what if I run out of gas or whatever? And when I would see red-tailed hawks, I'd be like, okay, I'm safe. And I didn't really have any reason to believe that, but that was just what I thought. And so when she was asking about that, I was like, red-tailed hawk. And she said, oh, that's interesting. And I was like, yeah. And as we're talking, I'm like, oh, there's one. And like one just like flew right over us. And she had said to me, oh, you can call the birds. And I was like, oh, no, I don't even know what that means. I can't call birds. And she said, yeah, you can. And I was like, no, I can't. So, so intuition, yes, no, that was fear saying, no, I can't do that. And so I just remember she was graduating. I still had one more year. And one of the last things she told me before she graduated was, you need to learn to trust your intuition. And I was like, that's not what I want to say to a friend when we're leaving, So I was like, okay. And I kind of forgot about that until I started I was in some coursework, we'll say, with a shamanic practitioner, and we were doing journeying together, and she asked me to call in an animal, and I called in the red-tailed hawk, and she said, you can call in animals. And it brought me back to that conversation with Desiree, that I was like, wait, what? That's what this girl said to me like years ago. And so I thought, oh, that's really interesting. And so that sort of solidified for me that there are things out there for us. There are messages that we can receive. I think nature is really an easy one for us to connect to. Unless you don't like being outside, then that's a whole other issue. But I think it's really easy because there's something that lights us up. Going to the beach, going for a hike, gardening, seeing the birds, whatever it might be, feeling the breeze on your face. There's something that lights you up about nature. There has to be. And because we're so connected to it. So, thinking about like what could be one of your nature guides, it doesn't have to be birds. I'm just saying that that's kind of where I started. But thinking about that, is there something that you notice that you sort of pay attention to? It catches your attention. Um, I just happen to look up at the right time to see birds. I just happen to look out my window at the right time to see certain birds. It's not just coincidence, right? So I don't know if you guys have had any of those experiences or not, but I encourage you, if you haven't thought about that, to start thinking about what are my connections to Earth, what are my connections to nature, because you have them, you absolutely have them, and it doesn't matter where you're from, whether you're from the city, whether you're European, it doesn't really matter. At some point in your lineage, if you go far enough back, right, you're going to have somebody that lived on the land that followed nature. Yeah, well, Jen, you'll have to think about what, if you have a nature guide, and how you can tap into that nature guide, to give you those nudges, to give you a little bit of clarity. So as you're feeling like I'm still working on my intuition, it gives you just a little bit of flavor of something external giving me the feedback, but that's okay. That's where it can start. Um, Trust is part of that practice, but also just simply noticing what is showing up for me. And I will say now I know that you can have different animal totems. They can change. It may not be something that's always there. And I notice, sometimes I won't see a particular bird for a really long time, but something else shows up. So I'm always curious about like, what's up with that? Why has something changed? So yeah, I don't know. Does anyone have any thoughts about what their nature guides could be? I know it takes a little bit of time with the chat. I gotta get it off slow mode, and I don't know how. Yeah, I don't know how to do it. Well, you guys let me know if you have any experiences like that, and to put it out there. And again, you want to do those same things if you're hoping. Oh, Red Robin. Interesting. I love that. And I think the robin is always spring. It's always new beginnings. This is such a perfect time for new beginnings. Oh, dragonflies. I love that. Yeah, they're constantly around you in random places. Well, if you could see behind me, I have a bunch. Well, you can't, but I have a bunch of dragonfly stuff behind me. Um, yeah, so I've always been pretty into birds too, but never thought about them being a nature guide. Kind of thought of them as a sign of some sort. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And it may not be. I mean, for me, it's birds. It may not be that for you. We had ducks that landed in our pool every year. The year my mom passed, we were saying we had not seen them yet. And the day after she died, they arrived for the year. Oh, I love that. It's sort of like the message from your mom saying, I'm okay, right? I'm here with you. That's awesome. That's awesome. I love that. Yeah, I think it's really curious. When I did a vision quest in, is that October? I can't remember. My first short one. And I was trying to pay attention to like all the birds that I heard and saw. And it was the quietest that the forest, I was in a forest preserve. It was the quietest it had ever been. And I thought, man, I really picked the wrong place, right? I went to that like self-doubt place. It's like I really picked the wrong place. Why are there empty birds here? I don't know what's going on. Why is it so quiet? I've never been here and it's been so quiet. So I'm all like lamenting that. And I was basically sending prayers to the four directions, and I was turning my body, and I saw there was a red-tailed hawk in the tree above me. So I'm like, oh, that's, well, one, how cool is that? But two, I was like, that's why everyone's so quiet, because he's up there, right? And then he eventually flew away, and I did see him again when I was leaving. But it was interesting. Like, we can easily go into that place of self-doubt, of worry, of fear, of like, my intuition's broken. I just cannot connect to anything. And when you get to that place, when you get super frustrated and are like, my intuition's broke, that is when I want you to take some deep breaths, to do a little grounding or rooting, to try to go within, pick up on what's in the present, what's happening to my mind, body, spirit in the present, and then start to think about, what messages have I received? And even if they feel nonsensical, even if they feel not connected, even if it feels like, I don't know, everybody gets these messages, write them down, journal them out, and then see if there's a pattern. And you'll notice that there is. There will be a pattern. I can guarantee you that. You just have to look at it. But I think it's really important to have that awareness, to really notice, like, when we're starting to doubt ourselves, because it's going to happen. We're not always going to stay perfectly aligned with our higher self. It's just not going to happen. We're too human. Yeah, when I was walking my dog a couple of weeks ago, I looked up at a tree. I saw two crows and a hawk. Each bird was in a different branch. It formed a triangle. How cool is that? I love that. And I love that they were like not bothered by each other, because I would think the hawk would want to take off and the crow would want to, well, be a crow. I love crows though. That's cool. I wonder, and so so in that moment, how did that make you feel, right? What was that message? What was that triangle meaning to you, right? What was the message of the crow? So crow and hawk have different but similar in some respects. They're very spiritual, crows. Same with hawks. So you'll have to think about, like, what did that mean to me? What did I think? What did I feel? What did I see after that? What did I experience after that? Do you think doing mini projects to build trust would help? Yeah. Like asking, should I go to the store today? Should I send this email and try following your intuition? Yes, I love that. I love that. That is such a good idea. It's like, I'll say it's challenging us. Oh, maybe not. It's not a great way of looking at it. It's building trust. We'll say that. See, we're reframing it into something that's a little bit more affirmative. Yeah, I do like that, because you're really practicing that with stuff that doesn't really feel huge. And if you get the answer of like, I don't really want to go to the store today, or I don't really want to send this email, like, that's okay, right? But see, like, what would I prefer to do? So if I could do anything else today, what would I do, right? And yeah, not going to work. But besides that, right? Like, tap into the stuff that you would like to do and see, like, okay, so maybe I'm, thinking about vacation and I don't want to send out this email, but maybe just recognizing, just bringing awareness to, I'd rather be doing something else, softens some of the frustration we can feel with some of that stuff. And then it sort of dissipates on its own. And then we're able to kind of shift back into what we need to do. But I like that, kind of building that trust. And you can do it any way that seems to work for you. You also, I mean, if there's a journal, I hate to say, if there's a journaling component to that, I would add that. So one thing I was just kind of thinking about, so if it was like, should I go to the store today? Start to tap into, like, what is, like, my emotional response, what's my physical response, what's my mental or sensations, what is that response, because I think that's good too. So you'll know, like I said, when it's something that I don't really like, I sort of shrink in, I sort of kind of like contract. And then when it's something intuitive that's positive, you expand, you sort of move out, you get excited, right? That's when people are telling you stories and they're so excited, they like lean into your space. But they're just excited. That's okay. But so you want to think about, like, am I feeling expansive or am I contracting? That's a good one. Yeah. And maybe even, adding a little onto there. If not this, then what? So if I shouldn't go to the store today, what should I do? I don't like should. Um, but we'll play around with that too. But yeah, no, that would be a good one. Definitely. Yeah. Yeah. And knowing, I mean, for people that have been working with me for a while, my story about how last summer, like every time I walked Norbert, my dog, or our dog, every time I was like, oh, I want to get a turkey vulture feather. I want to get a turkey vulture. And I didn't get one. But anyways, like I put that intention out there of like, I want that, right? And then we're waiting for that to receive. But it's funny, I never tapped into like, what is my intuition telling me about this until the day that I received my red tail hawk feather. The day that I received that, I had this instant thought where now the hawk had flown past me, but it dawned on me, what if I'm hoping for the wrong thing? What if it's not the turkey vulture feather that I'm needing? What if it's another feather? And so I kind of put that out there that like, okay, yep, I can be wrong. I'm definitely human. I'll make a lot of errors. And so what do I need to know in this moment? What energy do I need to understand, or what medicine do I need to receive? And 50 feet away was that feather. So, I think it's important for us to just notice what we're feeling, to if it's stress, if it's tension, if it's incongruence, how do I break that up? How do I release that? Just being open to that, and being curious about what's happening, just noticing what's happening within the body. And really, I know it's a hard one, but trusting that you're going to receive those messages, because you do. And your intuition will keep tapping. will keep showing you that same message. I can think of a time that the first time I saw something, I was like, oh, that wasn't for me. That wasn't a message for me. And then the second time I saw it, I was like, oh, no, that's just coincidence again. And then the third time I was like, oh, maybe that was a message for me. So it takes a little bit of time sometimes, but when you finally receive it, you receive it. So just give yourself a little bit of grace with that. Just be patient with yourself. If this is a new skill, it does take a little practice and a little time. And of course, if anyone needs support or help with building intuition, with doing any of the practices, creating a habit of breath work or of meditation or of journaling, or even tapping into the wisdom of nature, you can always reach out to me. And if you're not ready to work with me, that's okay. I can give you some resources. If you are ready to work with me, that's always fabulous. So you can see what I have on my website, or you can email me or get in contact with me in any way. But I think this is important because we really are moving into a time where some of the toxicity is going to be fading away, which is a welcome time. And it's really asking us to kind of step forward with our best self, so that we can collaborate with others, so that we can lift others up, so that we can kind of shine a light on stuff that's sort of fallen to the wayside when it comes to justice, and equality. And to do that, I feel like you really need to be rooted. You really need to be grounded in who you are, really understand who you are, really understand your personal power, how you can step into that personal power. And I absolutely believe it starts with having a really good relationship to your higher self. And how you're going to build that is through your intuition. So this is sort of that new era, new day dawning, which is exciting, definitely exciting. And so I want people to have that information, and that knowledge of like, how can I bring that forward? How can I bring my best self so I'm making the best choices, not only for me, but, and not to say that every choice has to be a collective, but we do want other people to think about how are my choices going to impact other people, right? Because I feel like that hasn't really been the case for a little bit. So I think this is a really good place to start. And for me, it didn't come automatically with intuition, my own intuition, because that got negated for many years. But building that back up was so much easier with nature. So hopefully that helps. I don't know if anyone has any questions. We have like a few more minutes. I can answer some questions. Oh, you're welcome. Thank you so much for coming. Aw, thanks. Yeah. We got to inspire each other, right? And I'm like, I'm always hopeful about it getting better because I know it does. And I know it can because I know it does. But yeah, we got to inspire each other, right? Oh, thanks. Yeah. And just if you need anything, just reach out. Um, Otherwise, I wish you well with practicing how to tap into your intuition and see if you have any messages from your nature guides. Just put it out there that you're hoping to receive that and see what comes back to you. Oh, you're welcome. We'll say number one best friend. That's great. 20 years. That's great that you guys have had that friendship for so long. Oh, you're welcome, Carmen. All right. Take care, everybody. Hope to see you soon.